Pam Bondi faced ridicule, was brushed aside, and challenged to demonstrate her worth on stage. The subsequent events turned the narrative on its head and brought a sense of humility to all who were observing. It unfolded in a podcast episode that no one anticipated would capture widespread attention. The guest was Jackson Weller, an indie rock musician hailing from Portland, recognized for his innovative perspectives and cutting wit. He was in the midst of recounting a tale about performing at a fundraiser when the host interjected nonchalantly, "Have you ever encountered anyone from the political scene backstage?" Jackson let out a soft laugh, savored a sip of his drink, and leaned closer to the microphone. He said with a smirk, "Pam Bondi was at one of those events. She seems pleasant, I suppose. But really, she regarded the grand piano as if it were just some flat-pack item from IKEA. I question whether she can distinguish middle C from a cup of coffee." The room erupted in laughter. It was the sort of remark that resonated perfectly with his typical audience, youthful, progressive, and wary of anyone with a history in politics. Jackson had a reputation for his casual, cutting remarks. Many dismissed him as unworthy of serious consideration. Yet, on this occasion, it remained. Footage of that moment circulated on social media in just a matter of hours. The quote was edited, looped, and transformed into memes that spread with captions such as, "Jackson takes a musical jab at Pam Bondi," and "Pam, are you aware of what a piano actually is?" There was no reply from her. Not at that time. In Tampa, Pam found herself perched at her kitchen counter when her phone vibrated with a buzz. Her niece had shared the clip with a laughing crying emoji. Pam observed it once, then a second time. She remained composed, showing no sign of annoyance. With a soft sigh, she gently closed the video and placed the phone face down, her demeanor composed. Her tea had grown tepid. However, she chose not to remove the clip. Jackson still had more to offer. A week later, he brought her up once more, this time during an interview with an online magazine based in Seattle. "I suppose she's quite intelligent, no doubt about it. Yet, I question whether she possesses any spark of creativity," he remarked. "Art cannot be fabricated. It's either in your heart or it's not." The quote only intensified the situation. It evolved from a light-hearted jest into something harsher, more intimate. Certain enthusiasts brushed it aside with amusement. Some individuals experienced discomfort. Some longtime fans began to express their doubts, asking if this was truly needed. "Just let the music play, my friend." Yet Jackson remained oblivious, or was indifferent. He was set to tour in Florida next month regardless. He assumed the clamor would eventually subside. Unbeknownst to him, Pam had just gotten a last-minute invitation to a prestigious charity event in Sarasota, a fundraiser focused on music and arts for children, the exact event that Jackson had pledged to perform at. The lineup featured a variety of elements: community leaders, public figures, charitable individuals, and creative talents. Pam had no intention of addressing the audience or stepping into the spotlight whatsoever. She was present as a discreet benefactor, a person who chose to remain in the shadows, offering support from a distance. It had been more than 15 years since she last performed in front of an audience. Yet, a change was beginning to unfold. Later that week, she entered her guest room, removed the dusty sheet that had been draped over her upright piano, and let her fingers glide across the keys. It was discordant, rigid from the passage of time. She smiled quietly to herself. She then retrieved her phone. "Hey Dan," she said, reaching out to her former music instructor from law school. "Are you still adjusting pianos?" In the meantime, Jackson continued to engage with the media. He made another quip about Pam during a radio show in Clearwater. "Perhaps she'll bring along her sheet music," he chuckled. "Who can say? Perhaps she will astonish us with chopsticks." He was unaware that she had been honing her skills almost daily. He was unaware that she had already chosen the piece. He was unaware that she had no desire to engage in conversation, simply having some fun. Yet, the evening of the occasion was approaching rapidly. Not everyone would find it amusing when it finally arrived. Pam Bondi's public persona has consistently been meticulously managed. Polished attire, confident declarations, photogenic grins. For years, that was the extent of her identity for most people. Legal advocate, public servant, media commentator. A woman who maintained a careful, intentional, and concentrated approach. Yet, beyond that veil lay a sight seldom witnessed. A completely distinct cadence. Before the rigors of law school, the intricacies of politics, and the buzz of headlines, there existed a world of music. Pam spent her childhood in Dunedin, Florida. Her father held the esteemed position of fire chief in the town. Her mother led Sunday school and played the piano at church. Each Thursday afternoon, Pam strolled 3 blocks from school to Mrs. Donatelli's home, where an old Baldwin upright piano rested in the living room, mere feet away from the scent of lemon polish and aged books. At the age of 8, she first laid her fingers on the keys. At the age of 10, she discovered her love for Chopin. Mrs. Donatelli had a formidable presence. She would strike the edge of the piano bench with a ruler whenever Pam slouched or let a finger fall. Embrace the emptiness, she would often express. Don't merely play the notes, convey the truth. At the age of 15, Pam could effortlessly play sonatas from memory. At 16, she secured second place at the Tampa Bay Youth Music Competition, just shy of first after experiencing a moment of hesitation mid-measure during a Debussy piece. The sting of that loss lingered. The silence enveloped the room as she rose and exited the stage, leaving her words unspoken. She remained composed. She meticulously folded the program into a tidy square and preserved it in her wallet for years. Yet fate had different intentions. Her parents separated, college approached swiftly, and the music that once resonated within her began to fade. She embarked on a journey through criminology, followed by law. She promised herself that she would return to music when life settled down. They never did. Time flowed on. My professional life became the main focus. Extended hours, media conferences, legal settings, and election routes. The piano lingered in her guest room, accumulating dust beneath a collection of old books and framed photographs. Inquiries about her interests faded away. Many believed she possessed none. Not even her nearest colleagues were aware of the piano. Just one individual ever revisited the topic, a man by the name of Grant Hallberg. Grant had served as a deputy prosecutor, a few years her junior, possessing a subtle demeanor. In the midst of a particularly grueling case in 2007, the two began to put in long hours at the office. One evening, while sharing some less-than-stellar takeout, Grant's eyes fell upon the sheet music tucked away in Pam's briefcase. She became still when he highlighted it. "Do you engage in play?" he inquired. She mentioned it was once the case. "Which piece are you referring to?" She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Nocturne in C-sharp minor." He blinked, momentarily taken aback. "Really? That's not something for novices." She acknowledged with a nod before returning to her meal. Silence followed. A couple of weeks later, on the day she celebrated her birth, he placed a small envelope on her desk. Within, there lay a solitary page of music. Only the initial notes of that nocturne, accompanied by a yellow sticky note. "Do not linger endlessly," it conveyed. He passed away 5 months later. Cerebral aneurysm. No alert. She held onto the note, never letting it slip away. Years later, when her niece sent her that clip of Jackson Weller joking about her and the piano, Pam perceived more than just a playful jab. She experienced that familiar constriction in her chest, reminiscent of the moment she stepped off the stage at 16. The sharpness of that sensation, the subtle nudge. She felt no anger. She showed no signs of embarrassment whatsoever. She found herself lost in thought. As the Sarasota charity event approached, she had dedicated herself to nightly practice for almost a month. Initially, her hands felt rigid, yet she was pleasantly surprised by how swiftly her muscle memory came back to her. The sessions were kept confidential. Dim the lights. No audio files available. Only she, the keys, and a vow she had unknowingly crafted for herself long ago. The selection she made was deliberate. It was the very piece she had never completed during her performance on stage. Debussy's Clair de Lune. As the date drew near, Pam's name began to surface on the guest list for the event, though it was noted solely as a donor. No official announcement. No sign of anything out of the ordinary. Jackson Weller remained oblivious. Or if he did, he failed to see the bigger picture. He was prepared with a carefully curated set list. A few colleagues from the industry were arriving by plane. He imagined it would be an enjoyable, relaxed evening filled with a touch of media attention, a few drinks, and plenty of applause. Perhaps he would throw in a playful remark or two, share some chuckles, reveal to the audience that charisma he was famous for. What he failed to understand was that Pam wasn't seeking attention. She was drawn in by the melodies. Yet, the spotlight would not shine on him eternally. And when it failed to unfold as expected, the world began to change in ways that took everyone by surprise. The Ritz-Carlton Ballroom in Sarasota glimmered beneath delicate strands of gentle illumination. The sort that transformed every cocktail dress into a bespoke creation and elevated each glass of champagne to a more exquisite experience. While it was indeed a charity event, it also served as a prime opportunity for capturing moments. A congregation of Florida's elite, featuring hushed auctions, lavish shrimp displays, and a Steinway grand piano poised near the center stage, reminiscent of furniture eager for recognition. The theme centered around creativity for the upcoming generation, gathering support for community school music initiatives. Pam Bondi made her entrance shortly after 7:15 p.m., adorned in a sleek black satin dress paired with understated heels. She arrived solo. She chose not to notify the media. It had been years since she last stepped onto a stage. She hadn't intended to be on one tonight either, unless the occasion demanded it. Across the room, Jackson Weller was fully immersed in his craft. He donned a brown suede jacket paired with an open-collared shirt. A guitar case rested against a nearby table as he engaged in a lively discussion with two local journalists and a fellow musician from Miami, who had shared the stage with him earlier that year. Initially, he overlooked Pam. She lingered at the periphery of the room, sipping seltzer and engaging in conversation with a handful of familiar faces from her time in office. There was no mention of pianos at all. She also chose not to mention it. Then, amidst the third-pass tray of mini crab cakes and the opening remarks, Jackson caught sight of her. He acted without a moment's pause. He approached her with the confidence of someone ready to impress at a high-stakes gathering. His voice carried, reaching the ears of those in close proximity. He remarked, raising his glass. The iconic figure in question. Pam pivoted gradually, her face a mask of ambiguity. Jackson, she remarked with a courteous nod. He smiled broadly. Happy to see you here. I had no idea you were into art fundraisers. Indeed, she responded, particularly when children gain from it. He arched an eyebrow. Indeed, music education and everything that entails. So, are you getting any better at distinguishing between a Steinway and a side table? A handful of individuals chuckled uneasily. Pam merely cast her gaze in his direction. Is that how you typically converse at charity events? He gave a nonchalant shrug, simply maintaining a cheerful vibe. Moreover, you have a knack for humor, don't you? She took a moment to gather her thoughts. Times. That might have marked the conclusion of the matter. Yet Jackson, intoxicated by both wine and his own self-importance, had more to say. He waved his hand in the direction of the majestic piano positioned by the stage. What do you think? He spoke with a nonchalant tone, yet there was an underlying provocation. Care to challenge my perspective? Perform a piece. Everything. It's your choice. The room still held a whisper of sound. Yet the atmosphere had transformed. Several gazes shifted. A photographer paused in the midst of capturing the moment. Even the woman managing the silent auction took a moment to stop at her laptop. Pam cast a fleeting look at the piano, then returning to Jackson. I don't engage with those who wish for my downfall. She spoke in a gentle whisper. That gave him pause for a moment. Just enough time for her to add, but I will play for the kids. She strode confidently past him, making her way to the stage. The moment held a quiet significance. She quietly left without causing a fuss. She glided forward with the same steady grace she exhibited in the courtroom. Regulated. Gathered. Finished. Jackson remained motionless. He was taken aback by her affirmative response. Not quite. He expected her to chuckle it away or fire a witty retort. Yet there she was at the piano, conversing softly with the sound technician. Silence enveloped the space as individuals gradually assembled. Several new phones have been released. Not in a rush, but with calmness. Like individuals feeling the anticipation of encountering something unusual and significant. Pam settled onto the bench. I made a few minor adjustments. She rested both hands in her lap. Not a single word escaped her lips. Not for the audience. Not for Jackson. To no one. Her gaze fell upon the keys, inhaled deeply, and shut her eyes. Jackson lingered by the bar, observing her from afar. A companion leaned closer and murmured, "You may have made a mistake, my friend." Jackson remained silent. Yet, he was beginning to experience an emotion that had eluded him for years. Ambiguity, and the initial sound had yet to resonate. Pam remained motionless for a brief moment, her fingers poised delicately above the keys. The room was now enveloped in complete silence, a considerable challenge for an assembly of this nature. There was no announcement made. No one was required to. The atmosphere felt transformed, as though the very essence of the air had changed. Then she commenced, gentle, almost non-existent. The initial chords of Claire de Lune flowed from the Steinway, effortlessly taking form like water discovering its vessel. Initially, there was no response from the crowd. Caught me off guard. Excessively polished. Excessively deliberate to feel relaxed. Some speculated that the audio equipment had triggered a track. Yet they soon observed her hands in motion, her form softly undulating with every word. This wasn't a party trick. This was practiced, patient, and heartbreakingly real. Jackson remained motionless at the rear, with arms crossed, jaw gently parted. At first, he struggled to find where the piece belonged. Yet he discerned the inflection. Melancholy ebbs and flows with elegance and an elusive quality. Melancholy. No. Remembrance. He was no longer amused. Pam's fingers glided with ease, graceful yet unhurried. Her eyes remained shut. She was not delivering her best work. She existed in a realm far removed from the present, a place known only to her. Voices were not hushed. They merely observed and absorbed the sounds. The emergence of camera phones had now reached its peak. The soft sounds of cameras capturing moments filled the air. Yet even those sounds seemed subdued, as if the room itself was reluctant to shatter the enchantment. And what about Jackson? He found himself lost in a memory as well. A night a decade past in San Francisco. A gathering of 20 individuals. His guitar slipped through his fingers, a testament to his overwhelming nerves. His fingers continually faltered, failing to find the correct chords. He felt the urge to walk away in the middle of the performance. Yet, a woman in the back row began to sway to the rhythm of the music regardless, beaming as if she were privy to a secret melody that eluded everyone around her. He hadn't experienced such vulnerability in years. Only at this moment, Pam's work came to a halt, wandered, and sustained it on a single, prolonged, aching note. And then, there was silence. She slowly opened her eyes, merely a moment too extended. She gently closed the lid, not in a dramatic way. Completed. She rose to her feet, offered the slightest acknowledgement to the technician, and descended from the platform. No bow, no elaborate display, simply a woman with a message to share, and conveyed it without uttering a sound. For a complete 10 seconds, there was utter stillness. Then the applause erupted, not compelled, unkind. It was constructed from the center of the space, surging forth as if on the brink of overflowing.